Mokuba always felt slightly strange inside Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters because the show kept treating him like he was important while rarely giving him a real function beyond standing near Kaiba and getting kidnapped at the worst possible time. In a different version of the story, that could have worked. Mokuba has a strong setup. He is Kaiba's little brother, the only person Kaiba openly cares about, and the one human connection strong enough to crack the metal door Kaiba built around his entire personality. That alone gives him value. Kaiba is a character who spends most of the series acting like emotional vulnerability is a disease. So having this small child follow him around, calling him Cedo, immediately gives the audience a clue that there is more under the coat, the ego, and the constant need to turn every conversation into a hostile business meeting. The problem is that Duel Monsters never really figures out what to do with Mokuba once that job is done. Early on, Mokuba makes sense. During the Pegasus arc, his role is clear. Pegasus wants Kaiba Corp. Kaiba is trapped. Mokuba becomes part of the leverage. He represents the company, the family bond, and the one thing Kaiba would actually put ahead of his own pride. The entire situation works because it turns Kaiba from a rich, arrogant rival into someone with something real to lose. Kaiba can insult Yugi, threaten people, and act like the world's most dramatic CEO. But once Mokuba is involved, the joke stops. Suddenly, Kaiba is fighting for something beyond proving he is better at a children's card game than another teenager with gravity-defying hair. That is where Mokuba is at his strongest. He gives Kaiba emotional stakes. He reminds us that Kaiba's obsession did not come from nowhere. The flashbacks with Gozaburo show that Sato and Mokuba were children who survived a brutal household by clinging to each other. Kaiba became cold, ruthless, and controlling because that world rewarded cruelty. Mokuba stayed loyal because for him, Seto was still the brother who protected him. Their bond is the closest thing Kaiba has to a heart, which is funny because Kaiba spends most of the series acting like hearts are inefficient software. So when Mokuba is kidnapped, captured, trapped, or threatened, the show knows exactly what reaction it wants from Kaiba. He becomes more frantic. He loses some of his calculated cool. He still talks like a villain in a boardroom, but the emotion underneath is obvious. Mokuba gives the audience permission to care about Kaiba without pretending Kaiba is suddenly nice. Kaiba remains rude, stubborn, arrogant, and almost physically allergic to gratitude. Mokuba simply proves he is capable of love, which is already a massive reveal for a character whose main hobby is yelling at fate. The issue is repetition. After the first major use, the show keeps returning to Mokuba as a hostage button. When the writers need Kaiba to care, Mokuba is placed in danger. When they need to soften Kaiba, Mokuba looks worried. When they need an emotional reaction, Mokuba shouts his brother's name. That works once. It can work twice. After a while, it starts to feel like the character has been reduced to a walking alarm system. There is a reason it feels off. Most major characters in Duel Monsters have some kind of relationship with the central game. Yugi duels because the entire story is built around him. Joey duels because he grows through the game. Kaiba duels because it is his religion, personality disorder, business model, and coping mechanism all at once. T, Tristan, and Bakura may have inconsistent roles, but they still belong to the friend group around Yugi. They react to the duels, support the emotional side of the story, and help build the feeling of a group adventure. Mokuba sits in a strange middle area. He is attached to Kaiba, yet he is too young and too underwritten to stand beside him as a serious partner. He is close to the main cast, yet he is never truly one of Yugi's friends. He is connected to Kaiba Corp, yet he rarely does anything meaningful with that connection. He is around the duelists, yet he is barely a duelist himself. The show keeps placing him near important events without giving him a reason to shape them. That becomes more noticeable because Duel Monsters is already a very loud show. Everyone is dramatic. Everyone announces their beliefs. Everyone treats cards like moral philosophy with attack points. In that world, a character needs a strong lane. Joey is the underdog. Kaiba is the rival. Pegasus is the theatrical villain. Merrick is the horror villain. Yugi is the moral center. Mokuba's lane is Kaiba's brother, and the show never really expands him beyond that. He should have been the emotional bridge between Kaiba and the rest of the world. That seems like the obvious purpose. Mokuba understands Kaiba better than anyone, but he is also far more open-hearted than Kaiba. He could have been the person who slowly starts seeing Yugi and his friends differently, creating tension with Kaiba because Mokuba recognizes that they are decent people. The show touches this idea, especially when Mokuba trusts Yugi or accepts help from the group, but it rarely lets that grow into anything serious. That would have created an actual conflict for him. Mokuba could love Kaiba while also realizing that Kaiba's pride hurts people. He could respect his brother while fearing what Kaiba is becoming. He could want Kaiba to win while slowly understanding that winning is the thing destroying him. That is a good character role. It gives Mokuba a purpose beyond being protected. It would also make Kaiba more interesting, because Kaiba hearing criticism from Yugi is one thing. Kaiba hearing disappointment from Mokuba is a completely different problem. The series almost gets there, but it usually pulls back. Mokuba worries about Kaiba. He pleads with him. He tells him to stop sometimes. Yet, those moments rarely change the direction of the story. Kaiba hears him, ignores him, wins or loses the duel, and returns to being Kaiba. Mokuba becomes emotional decoration around Kaiba's arc instead of a force inside it. Battle City makes this even clearer. On paper, Mokuba should matter a lot there. Kaiba is hosting the tournament. Kaiba Corp is running the technology. The whole city has become one giant dueling machine because Kaiba decided the best way to process ancient trauma was to organize a card game war. Mokuba is present as Kaiba's assistant, which sounds useful. He can monitor the tournament, help with logistics, and keep the Kaiba Corp side of the plot moving. That role is functional, but it is thin. Most of the time, Mokuba is there to explain where people are, react to danger, or worry about Kaiba. He gets scenes, but he does not get momentum. He is close to the machinery of the plot, yet he rarely makes decisions that alter it. Kaiba is the one who controls the tournament. Yugi and Joey drive the emotional and dueling story. Merrick drives the villain plot. Mokuba watches all of this happen from beside a computer screen, which is a rough place to be in a show where even the computers somehow have more dramatic timing than normal people. The Noah arc gives Mokuba more attention, and in some ways it is the closest the series comes to making him central again. The virtual world storyline is directly tied to the Kaiba family, Gozaburo's legacy, and the damage done to Seto. Mokuba belongs there because the story is about the family nightmare that shaped him. Noah using Mokuba's body also creates personal stakes beyond another basic kidnapping. It connects Mokuba to the larger question of identity, inheritance, and what Gozaburo's cruelty left behind. Even there, the focus naturally shifts back to Kaiba. That is almost unavoidable because Kaiba is the more forceful character. His trauma is louder. His choices are harsher. His hatred for Gozaburo gives the arc its power. Mokuba is emotionally relevant, but he still ends up as the person being used, tricked, or saved. The story circles around him without letting him stand in the center for long. That pattern follows him across the series. Mokuba is loved, threatened, rescued, worried, and protected. Those are passive positions. They can create sympathy, but they do not create a full character arc. He rarely wants something that belongs only to him. He rarely has a personal belief that challenges the story. He rarely makes a mistake with consequences. He rarely gets to be wrong in an interesting way. He is mostly good, loyal, and innocent, which makes him likable, but it also makes him flat. This is why he feels out of place. Duel Monsters is full of exaggerated characters with clear obsessions. Kaiba wants to defeat Yugi and prove destiny is fake. Joey wants to prove himself. Yugi wants to save people without losing himself. Pegasus wants control through fantasy and grief. Merrick wants revenge twisted through trauma. Even smaller characters usually have a simple hook. Mokuba's hook is emotional attachment, and once that attachment is established, the show struggles to develop it. He also does not fit neatly into the tone of Kaiba's world. Kaiba Corp is absurd, cold, futuristic, and corporate in the funniest possible way. Kaiba builds theme parks, satellites, arenas, hologram systems, and giant towers because apparently therapy was too affordable. Mokuba standing beside him creates a strange image. One brother looks like he is about to announce a hostile takeover of the moon. The other looks like he should be asking if they can stop for snacks. That contrast can be charming, but it also exposes how little Mokuba has to do. The show wants Mokuba to humanize Kaiba, and he does. The show also wants him to be part of the adventure, and that is where the fit becomes awkward. He is too attached to Kaiba to become part of Yugi's group. He is too gentle to become part of Kaiba's rivalry. He is too young to participate in the darker villain plots as an equal player. He is too important to remove, but too limited to push forward. So he remains nearby, always emotionally relevant in theory, often narratively unnecessary in practice. A stronger version of Mokuba would have let him grow into Kaiba Corp's moral conscience. That role was sitting right there. Kaiba controls the company like a weapon. He uses technology to dominate, humiliate, and outshine everyone. Mokuba could have represented the original dream behind Kaiba Corp, the idea of building games for children instead of turning every invention into another shrine to Seto's ego. The series mentions that Kaiba wanted to create a better world for kids after taking the company from Gozaburo, but that dream gets buried under tournaments, revenge, and Blue Eyes White Dragon worship. Mokuba could have been the one who remembered it. Imagine if Mokuba's purpose became reminding Kaiba what they were supposed to build before Pride took over. That would give him weight without turning him into a duelist. He would not need to beat anyone in a card game. He would not need a secret deck or a sudden chosen one backstory. He would simply need a point of view. Kaiba wants power. Mokuba wants the dream they had as children to survive. That tension would make every Kaiba Corp arc sharper. The series also could have let Mokuba mature in small, visible ways. He starts as the little brother who worships Seto. Over time, he could begin making independent choices. He could disagree with Kaiba more seriously. He could help Yugi's group behind Kaiba's back, not because he has turned against his brother, but because he understands that Kaiba is wrong in that moment. That would create drama. Kaiba would feel betrayed. Mokuba would feel guilty. Their bond would become more complicated, which is exactly what it needed. Instead, Mokuba's loyalty stays almost untouched. He loves Kaiba, believes in Kaiba, worries about Kaiba, and waits for Kaiba. That is sweet, but after a certain point, sweetness is all he has. In a show filled with ancient spirits, corporate warfare, shadow magic, and people screaming card names with life or death seriousness, being sweet can only carry a character so far. His relationship with Yugi also could have gone further. Mokuba has every reason to respect Yugi. Yugi saves him, helps him, and repeatedly shows compassion even when Kaiba is being unbearable. That creates an interesting emotional problem. Mokuba knows Yugi is good. He also knows Kaiba hates losing to him. So where does Mokuba stand when the person his brother resents is also the person who keeps helping them? The series gestures at this, but it never fully turns it into a character struggle. That is a missed opportunity because Mokuba could have been the one person caught between the two main moral forces of the show. Yugi believes in friendship, trust, and the heart of the cards. Kaiba believes in willpower, intellect, and building a giant machine until reality gives up. Mokuba lives between those worlds. He loves Kaiba's strength, but he responds to Yugi's kindness. That should have shaped him. It should have created a quiet arc where he starts understanding both sides better than anyone else. There is also the issue of age. Mokuba being young limits what the writers can do with him, especially in a story that keeps escalating into supernatural danger. He cannot believably stand beside the main duelists in the same way. He cannot carry a major tournament arc unless the show reworks him heavily. But that limitation could have been used. His youth could have made him the character who sees through the adults and teenagers turning everything into ego. He could have asked simple questions that expose how insane everyone else is acting. And honestly, someone needed to do that. Duel Monsters is a world where a billionaire teenager will threaten global infrastructure because he lost a card game to a boy with a puzzle necklace. Mokuba could have been the voice asking whether any of this is normal. Instead, he usually accepts the madness because the show needs him to move with the plot. He reacts emotionally, but he rarely challenges the basic insanity around him. The biggest reason Mokuba's purpose feels unfinished is that Kaiba himself does not truly complete an emotional arc through him. Kaiba changes in small ways, and Mokuba helps reveal those changes. But Kaiba never fully confronts what his obsession costs his brother. He never has the devastating realization that Mokuba has spent the whole series watching him choose rivalry over peace. The story protects their bond from that level of conflict, which keeps it comforting but also keeps it shallow. That matters because Mokuba is supposed to be Kaiba's anchor. An anchor should pull someone back. Most of the time, Mokuba simply proves there is still someone waiting on shore while Kaiba sails directly into another storm wearing a white coat and a personal grudge. He gives Kaiba emotional context, but he does not often change Kaiba's direction. By the later arcs, Mokuba feels more like a legacy character than an active one. He belongs because he has always belonged. He appears because Kaiba appears. He worries because that is what he does. The audience understands the bond, so the show keeps using the bond, even though it has stopped developing. That creates the feeling that Mokuba's purpose was introduced early and never properly replaced after the Pegasus arc. He started as the reason Kaiba had something to lose. He became the proof that Kaiba had a heart. After that, the series needed to give him a new purpose. It never fully did. That does not make Mokuba a bad character. He is easy to like. His loyalty gives Kaiba some of his best human moments. Without Mokuba, Kaiba becomes much colder and much less layered. The problem is that Mokuba is valuable mostly because of what he reveals about someone else. That is useful for a supporting character, but Duel Monsters keeps him around long enough that the lack of personal direction becomes obvious. He is one of those characters who feels important when you remember the idea of him, and strangely underused when you look at what he actually does. The concept is strong, the little brother of the most arrogant character in the show, carrying the last piece of that character's humanity. The execution keeps returning to the same few beats. Mokuba gets endangered. Kaiba reacts. Mokuba believes in him. Kaiba softens for half a second before going back to declaring war on common sense. There was a better character hiding inside him. The show could have made him Kaiba's conscience, Kaiba Corp's future, Yugi's quiet ally, or the one person brave enough to tell Seto that winning every battle still left him miserable. Any of those paths would have given Mokuba a clearer identity. Instead, he remains stuck in the role he had at the beginning, the brother Kaiba loves, the hostage villain's target, the kid standing beside greatness without being allowed to grow into his own. That is why Mokuba feels out of place in Duel Monsters. He belongs emotionally, but the plot rarely knows where to put him. He is tied to one of the strongest characters in the series, yet he is barely allowed to become a character outside that tie. He gives Kaiba depth, but he does not receive much depth in return. For a show built around people discovering who they are through impossible card games, ancient magic, and deeply unreasonable tournaments, Mokuba spends most of his time waiting for the story to decide who he is supposed to be. And somehow, it never really